Hello everyone, my name is Wing Supernova and welcome back to the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. In the last episode, we interviewed these two men who were the ringleaders of the Red-Headed League sort of con artist scheme, and we determined that based on their testimony, this man right here, who was formerly known as something, I actually don't remember what they called him. It was some dumb name, Mr. Lips. I'll call him Mr. Lips. He was not just a peddler outside. He's actually Hugh Boone, the man who owned the room where Gregson was found dead. And now we're about to pin his ass to the wall because he says right here, I've no kinfolk or nothing. Why would I be involved in something like that? But he had this picture. Mrs. Vigil in his room. So here we go. If you have no kinfolk, as you put it, then explain why it is that among the sparse furnishings, we found this photograph in the room. Ah! I presume, as you've been renting the room, that this photograph belongs to you, does it not? Oh, well... Mr. Boone, drop the pretense and tell the court exactly who you really are.
I don't know. I don't know what you mean. I'm a peddler. I keep telling you so. You really don't need to bother with me. Please, just leave it alone.
As the man says, leave it alone. Whatever the truth is about this man's life, it has no bearing on this case. Because it's simply not possible that he impersonated Inspector Gregson. How can you be so sure? Just look at the man. No amount of disguise could ever hide those unmissable features. But what if we were to look at this the other way around? What do you mean? Yes, counsel, what do you mean? Well, there's no denying that Mr. Boone's lip is very prominent indeed. But consider the possibility that his prominent lip is itself part of an elaborate disguise. Then hiding that prominent feature, in all other words revealing his true face, would make an utterly impenetrable disguise. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Hugh Boone? Good witness, are you still hiding the truth from this court?
If that's a disguise, then underneath it, his true identity must be...
Yes, that's right. There's really only one person he could really be. My lord, the defense believes it can reveal Mr. Boone's true identity to the court.
No. Please, no.
Very well then, counsel. What is the true identity of this peddler who goes simply by the name of Gossip on the street?
It's Daily Vigil!
Your real name is actually Mr. Vigil, isn't it? Mr. Daily Vigil.
Yeah!
I don't recall that name, counsel. Who is this Mr. Vigil? It's a name I encountered yesterday, my lord. It has to do with a certain client of Mr. Herlock Sholmes. A young gentlewoman came to the detective asking him to locate her missing husband. The woman in this photograph, in fact, this is Mrs. Vigil. Oh yeah, because he'd been missing multiple days, and it would make sense if he was locked away, right? What? From what I understand, you haven't returned home since the night before the inspector was found dead. But of course, on that night, you were being held captive by the two Red-Headed League men. And last night, you were put up by the prosecution service in preparation for testifying in this trial. Because we'd been led to believe that you, Miss Venus, and Mr. Sandwich were all homeless. Being important witnesses in this case, we needed to know where we could find you, of course. And that explains why you've not only been unable to return home, but also unable to contact your wife, who's been beside herself with worry, waiting for you at the Vigil residence.
Now, just you hold on a minute.
What I'm talking about? Really? I don't have the first idea. Okay. It's a simple enough matter to confirm my suspicions. All we have to do is pull off that disguise.
No, please!
Bailiff, bring soap, a sponge, and a wash bowl at once. Mr. De Rousseau and Mr. De Rossi, you will restrain the witness. The Red-Headed League has to restrain the witness. Isn't that the bailiff's job?
Oui, my lord. Si, my lord.
Damn!
Wah! No, no, stop! Get off, please! Don't!
Get his ass. Yep. It's just a disguise. Well, we are now seeing your true features, I presume. Damn, they put a nice coat and shit on him, too. Lift your head, sir, so the court can see your face. It would appear that the defense counsel's assertion was entirely correct. This has all been a very elaborate deception. So, witnesses, tell the court. Have you seen this man before?
I don't believe it, but... See, there is no question. This is the inspector we saw in the park.
Extraordinary. On the day of the Red-Headed League enrollment, the man claiming to be Inspector Gregson who appeared before Mr. De Rousseau and Mr. De Rossi in the park was you, disguised as the inspector, or rather, was you posing as the inspector in no disguise at all. Mr. Vigil was formerly employed as the chief warder at Barclay Prison. The chief warder? Then your career had promise. Why, you would quite possibly have become the future governor of the prison. What on earth what on earth have you been doing peddling tittle-tattle on Fresno Street? Well, it's been 10 years since Mr. Vigil worked at the prison. 10 years.
I'm really dreadfully sorry about all of this. Yes, it's true. I am Daily Vigil.
I'm gonna change his voice because he's out of his disguise now. And you were the chief warder at Barclay Prison 10 years ago? So where did Mr. Hugh Boone come from?
Boone is... the other me. It's a name I invented.
Well, evidently there is a great deal under the surface here.
I'll explain everything. I'll tell you just how wretched my life has become.
Ooh. About to take a dark turn here, I feel.
As you say, it was 10 years ago now that my employment at as Barclay's chief warder came to an end. Having left the prison service, I searched for some new occupation by which to earn a wage. But times were hard in London, and I found no suitable engagements at all. In desperation one day, I turned my hand at selling wares on Fresno Street.
But your wife appears to know nothing of this. She still maintains that you were the chief warder at Barclay Prison.
I was utterly determined that my wife should not know of my failings, which is why I've never told her. I opened an account at the bank under the name of Hugh Boone, and I rented the cheapest room I could find on Fresno Street.
The scene of the very crime we're investigating.
Yes, that's right.
Ooh, artwork.
A place from which I could emerge every morning at 8 as a squalid peddler, and transform myself back every evening at 5 into a well-dressed man about town before returning home. That quickly became my daily routine.
I was puzzled by the lack of furniture in the room, but that explains it. But why on earth didn't you just tell us this in the first place?
I have a wife, sir, and 2 sons.
I didn't know you had any children.
And without wishing to sound self-conceited, they regard me with some pride. I couldn't bring myself to disappoint them.
So instead you decided to conceal your occupation from them?
Yes. I've made such a terrible mess of everything.
Still, one thing doesn't add up. No matter how many tidbits of information you could sell to a passing gentleman, even at 6 pence apiece, you couldn't hope to match the salary you must have commanded as chief warder at the prison. Very true. To have kept your family in comfort despite 10 years of somewhat misbegotten employment.
That was all thanks to Inspector Gregson.
What? Inspector Gregson? What on earth?
It was some years after I'd invented Boone and begun my other life as a street seller. He, the inspector that is, recognized me one day.
Do you mean to say the victim was an acquaintance of yours?
I knew him from my time working at the prison. When he saw what I'd become, he was deeply troubled for me and my family. And from that day forward, he visited me on Fresno Street with increasing regularity. Then one day, he asked me if I would carry out a secret assignment for him.
A secret? What was it?
I was to impersonate the inspector.
What? Impersonate him?
We always met in that little room so the inspector could brief me.
Visit Orxie's tomorrow and take a statement from the proprietress.
It was always something along those lines. Surveillance work, interviewing people. On those occasions, he would lend me his identification so people would believe who I was. My instructions were to make an impression, to let people know that Inspector Gregson had been at work. And for those services, he compensated me financially.
A Scotland Yard inspector willingly relinquished his identification into your care with intent to deceive? That, as I'm sure I need not point out, is a very serious criminal offense. But why? What was the point of you impersonating him?
I truthfully do not know. All I can say is that the inspector warned me on numerous occasions.
Now remember, Vigil, I need your solemn word. You don't blab about this to anyone, alright? Ever. Even if, well, if I end up a croaker.
In time, he started to bring papers with him to the room as well. It became something of a second office for him.
So, in fact, the person who declared himself to be Inspector Gregson at the park on Lime Street was really...
Yes, it was me, acting on the inspector's orders. As usual, I removed my Boone disguise, and then went as instructed to the park armed with the inspector's identification book. It never occurred to me that the bruise on my neck might give me away.
I mean, if we believe what he says, just straight up at face value, that means that he would have really no reason to kill Inspector Gregson, of course, because he was compensating him financially, allowing him to continue deceiving his family. In which case, I feel like we need an updated testimony from this guy as to his contact with Gregson the days before he was murdered. Right? Well,
it would seem this confession completely destroys the defense's case.
Explain yourself, Prosecutor Asogi. My learned friend's assertion was as follows. The victim was killed at another location on the day before his corpse was discovered, at the hands of these two Red-Headed League men when they imprisoned the inspector. Oh.
But no, that can't be. After all, it wasn't the inspector who went to the park that day, it was me. Oh, goodness. Finally, we have clarity. We had nothing to do with the murder of the inspector. And merci, Monsieur de la Défense, for proving it.
What? Ah! Why are you defeated about that? I mean, we're getting closer to the truth. Order! Indeed, it would appear that we have reached a de facto conclusion of sorts. The witnesses had no involvement in the murder of the victim, as proven, somewhat ironically, by the defense.
Ugh.
I hereby call an end to the cross-examination.
Hold it!
Ooh, Asogi, huh?
Pardon me, my lord, but with your permission, I would like to pose one further question to the witness. Kazuma?
What question, counsel?
It concerns the events of 10 years ago. I believe you would have been present at a very significant execution that was carried out at the time. 10 years ago? The execution of the professor, Genshin Asogi. I want to know exactly what your involvement was.
Oh!
Answer me, man.
One moment, counsel. Is this related to the current case?
Naturally. It is the prosecution's belief that this case and the events of 10 years ago are inextricably linked.
Does the defense concur, counsel?
Kazuma, you're not yourself. You're not as calm and collected as usual. Poor Kazuma-sama. No wonder he's acting this way. Mr. Vigil's memories of what happened 10 years ago would tell the tale of Genshin Asogi's last moments. His own father. I know. I do understand that, but even so. Prosecutor Asogi, do you genuinely believe that this question requires an answer in order to learn the truth behind Inspector Gregson's death? I need you to trust me. Please. Very well. Then the defense has no objection.
I see. In that case, you will answer the question, witness.
The truth is, I remember very little of that time.
You've forgotten?
I'm sorry to say, yes. As I said, I resigned from my role at the prison 10 years ago. But for some peculiar reason, my memory of the events leading up to that moment is extremely hazy. Does that not strike you as strange, Mr. Naruhodo?
Sorry?
Well, 10 years is a long time, but to have forgotten the reason why he left such an important job.
Yes, you're right.
And not only that, Mr. Vigil's claim contradicts what we already know. The human spirit is a fragile thing. It's broken all too easily, which is why we have a tendency to wrap it up for protection. Sorry? The human spirit? I'm afraid I don't understand what you mean. When we experience pain and suffering that we feel unable to bear, we block it out, obliterate it from our memories, seal it away. But it never truly leaves us. If the seal is broken, the memories resurface, and when they do, that fragile spirit may finally be crushed. But I really don't. Kazuma-sama.
But if it must be crushed, then so be it, because the truth will not stay buried. It's coming out one way or another. Right, now I understand. It's clear what his intentions are. He means to expose the truth at any cost. That's the best thing you can ask for with a prosecutor. Perhaps if I pointed out the contradiction in what Mr. Vigil claimed earlier, it might cause some crucial memories to return to him. But should I? Should I present the evidence or not? Of course you should. I mean, you leave it, nothing happens. I have no idea how this is going to go, but this is a court of law, and I have a duty to pursue the truth. Mr. Vigil, I'd like you to look at this. Evidence that clearly contradicts your version of events. It's this, right?
Take that!
Just a few moments ago, you made the following statement. I resigned from my role at the prison 10 years ago. Well, yes. In other words, you claim to have left the post of Chief Warder of your own volition. Well, yes, of course. Why? Tell me. Do you remember seeing this document before? No, I don't. This is a dismissal notice ordering the immediate termination of a prison staff member's employment. A dismissal notice? And the name on the notice is yours, Mr. Vigil. What? It's mine? So you didn't resign from the prison service at all. For some reason, you were dismissed as Chief Warder from Barclay. No, there's been some mistake. I'm sure. I'm sure I tendered my resignation. This dismissal notice is nonsense. Isn't it? If you were forcibly dismissed, there must have been a good reason. Clearly, you did something. Mr. Vigil, it's time to break the seal and have you remember. According to the few remaining records, the final execution that you supervised was on the 17th of June, 10 years ago. And on that day, something very serious took place at Barclay Prison. The 17th of June. Was that the professor's execution? Professor. As you were the chief warder at the time, it stands to reason that you would have been present throughout the proceedings. It does sound familiar. And yet, that execution never took place. The convict, ostensibly executed earlier that day, later re-emerged from his grave. The convict came back to life. In the cemetery in the middle of the night, there was a witness. However, the witness claims that a moment after he saw the convict clambering out of his grave, a gunshot rang out from over his shoulder, and the bullet pierced the professor's chest, killing him instantly. Those may have been the professor's actual last moments. Yes. Seeing as you were in charge of overseeing executions at the time, you must know the truth about what really happened. It's in your head, somewhere deep down. Well, Chief Warder Daily Vigil, I know there are memories in your head that can explain what happened on the 17th of June 10 years ago, and now it's time for you to drag them up. Mr. Vigil? Uh-oh. Here we go. Yes, the whole prison. It was complete chaos. The prisoner escaped. He was killed in the cemetery. The shocking news ripped through Barclay like a hurricane.
What?
I gotta take a drink. Oh.
Order! Do you mean to say, Mr. Vigil, that your memories of the time have returned?
My head, it's like some floodgates have been opened. The images, the screams. Oh my goodness. The papers. There were reports, articles about a man who'd seen a ghost.
Yes, Enoch Drebber.
But surely those reports were exaggerated.
There were traces at the scene.
Traces of what?
In Lowgate Cemetery, at plot number 139. Blood. Lots of blood. That's where the man was buried, of course. Obviously, something terrible had happened there.
The depths of conspiracy and depravity from which this tale is emerging are quite staggering.
I've reviewed the police records from that time extensively. A thorough investigation was conducted by Scotland Yard to ascertain how the convict managed to escape in the first place. And the conclusion reached by the investigating team was that a member of the prison staff must have been involved.
Are you suggesting that a prison warder abetted the man's bid for freedom?
Yes, and I was suspected of doing it. Of using that mass murderer's execution as a way to help him escape.
You did what?
I remember now. The horror of it all is coming back to me. One evening, a few days after the execution, some detectives came to the prison. I was called to the governor's office at the top of the watchtower.
I'm sorry, Daly. This is a serious business, but I can help you now. As Chief Warder, you were responsible for overseeing the execution afore, eh? Well, it seems the fellas at Scotland Yard want to have a few wee words with you about it. You'd better pack your things, laddie. You're to attend in person.
As soon as he told me that, my mind just went completely blank. And the next thing I do, the Professor, the most hated killer in our country's history. And I let him escape. I'm finished. My life is over.
Oh.
I am not doing that scream. It is too late at night for me to be doing that scream. He jumped out the window?
Order! Bailiff, fetch the doctor at once! Court is adjourned for today with immediate effect.
For today?
So, with Mr. Vigil's collapse, proceedings came to an abrupt end for the day. Once again overshadowed by the legacy of that notorious killer, appearing like a cursed ghost ship on a foggy ocean. Lord Van Zeeks, Mr. Vigil, Cosima, and Gregson. All of them bound by invisible chains anchored to the same wreckage in the murky depths of the past. But the miraculous light that had been trying to cut through the gloom and shine on those tragic events was playing on the edges of the truth at last.
To be continued. The fuck is going on? Is that the end of the case? I don't think that's the end of the case. I think we somehow have another day of investigation for this.
Oh yeah, buddy. Investigation part 2 time.
Jesus criminy. go. I still can't quite believe what just happened.
I know. I inquired with the bailiff after the court session was adjourned, and it seems Mr. Vigil was taken to hospital to recover.
Right. 10 years ago now, Mr. Vigil attempted to commit suicide by jumping out of the window of the prison governor's office. But ever since then, he's completely blocked the memory of those events from his mind. Nobody knew his secret, not his family, not even the man himself, but I forced it out into the open. Was it wrong of me to do that? Did I overstep the mark, I wonder? It doesn't matter. You did it.
Bruno!
Oh, Iris.
You were miles away. Anyway, I've brewed a fresh pot of something soothing tea for you.
Oh, thank you.
You and Susie have had an exhausting day so far, haven't you?
Oh.
Thank you, Iris. How thoughtful of you.
Do you happen to know where Mr. Sholmes is? When we came out of the courtroom back into the defendant's antechamber, he disappeared.
Oh, no, I don't know. He just suddenly sprang to his feet and left. All he said was, "I must leave." I wonder if he's pursuing the mystery of Inspector Gregson's death. Well, you know what Hurley's always saying, don't you? There are mysteries in this world that should perhaps never be solved. For the construction of a solution comes only at the expense of the destruction of something else.
What does that mean?
He knows very well that when you open someone else's old wounds, you often open up your own, too. But he just can't take his own advice and leave well alone. Solving mysteries is too important to him.
That's so true.
But that's what I like about Hurley, after all.
I suppose that's the lot of a great detective in some ways.
So then, let's have tea, and then I'll give you a hand.
Oh, do you have time, Iris?
Yes, I finished this month's manuscript at last, with barely a day to spare before the deadline. Oh, I'm so looking forward to it. A brand new story to read in the adventures of Herlock Sholmes. You know, I always hide Hurley's violin in the days before I have a deadline.
You do? Poor Mr. Sholmes.
I'm sure that's very wise, Iris. How sensible of you. Now then, my dear fellows, let's make a plan of action before we continue our investigation.
Okay, I guess we will.
So, how did it go in court this morning?
Well, we still don't know the truth about what really happened, but one thing's increasingly clear. Lord Van Zieks definitely didn't do it.
Oh, goody! Yes, that's right. We managed to uncover several new facts as well. Oh, really?
And there was another development too. Cosma.
Yes, it's quite clear now that Kazuma-sama is not himself. The way he's acting, it's almost as if he's possessed.
I know. I mean, at the end of the proceedings earlier, he was like a bloodhound the way he was chasing down Mr. Vigil's forgotten past. He's not normally so mercilessly persistent. What's going on in his head, I wonder? I really need to sit down with Kazuma and try to understand what he's going through. I don't know if we're going to be able to do that this case, though. If Gregson was really murdered the day before his body was discovered, then Lord Van Zieks has to be innocent, you see.
What, the day before? Well, that should be easy enough to work out, just by examining the corpse, surely. Yes, you would expect so, but curiously, no time of death was included in the autopsy report. That is curious.
There are still unanswered questions about Lord Van Zieks, though, aren't there?
Do you mean...
I mean, what was he doing there on Fresno Street that day in the first place?
Well, according to the man's testimony, He said he was investigating Inspector Gregson, didn't he?
And it turns out that little room was actually the inspector's secret office.
Ooh, that sounds like it has all the makings of a wonderfully devilish plot.
But then why was that notice board in there covered in all those particular papers? Papers about cases with a link to the Reaper. I'm starting to get a bad feeling about all this.
Oh dear, that sounds more like something horribly devilish. We must start by looking into Inspector Gregson's movements of late.
I think that's definitely true. I never imagined I might have to be investigating an inspector's movements.
Well, according to the entry in his diary, he was carrying out an incognito investigation of the Red-Headed League the day before his death. Oh, you mean he was doing the same as Hurley?
Well, Mr. Sholmes was trying to apply, whereas the inspector was supposed to be investigating.
I do wish it had been the other way around.
Anyway, as it turns out, the inspector who went to investigate the Red-Headed League that day wasn't actually Gregson at all. It was Mr. Vigil in possession of Gregson's identification.
You know what that sounds like to me? Establishing an alibi. Oh my, yes, you're absolutely right, Iris.
But why would Gregson need an alibi?
It would appear that the inspector had something to do that he wished to keep secret. I don't believe it. I always thought he was just a harmless lover of fish and chips.
But perhaps they were seasoned with something a little more potent than salt and vinegar.
I think perhaps we should try to move away from food analogies.
Yeah, it's a little bit tasteless, isn't it? Well, anyway, if Lord Van Zieks felt the need to investigate Gregson...
Yes, I agree. We must try to find out what he knows.
And, yeah, what happened to him?
Vigil, you say? Isn't that the name of the lady who came to visit Hurley yesterday? That's right, to ask Mr. Sholmes if he would help her to find her missing husband.
Only Mr. Sholmes completely passed the buck to us. Actually, didn't you say that Mr. Vigil had been taken to hospital? Do you know which one?
Ah, it's St.
Of course it's St. Sinners. I'm starting to wonder if all the other hospitals in London have closed down.
But that's amazing, Runo! You found the lady's husband already!
Well, I suppose I have, by accident.
And 10 years ago, while Mr. Vigil was the chief warder at the prison, he was responsible for overseeing the professor's incarceration. No!
So when the convict escaped, he was held responsible and immediately dismissed.
Sometimes I really don't want to grow up.
There's more. For 10 years after that, while he was ostensibly working as a peddler, he also had another secret job. He was paid by Gregson to be his stand-in, to impersonate the inspector.
To impersonate Gregsy? But why?
I have absolutely no idea.
Ginny was right. I'm starting to think all adults are up to no good now. Including you, Runo. I haven't paid anyone to impersonate me. That means he has ties to the professor and to Inspector Gregson, though. So I do think we ought to pay a visit to Mr. Vigil, don't you?
Back to St. Sinners, then. Man, I feel like I've been sitting here recording this specific episode for like 2 hours. It's been such a roller coaster.
Well, I think it's clear what we need to do, isn't it? Let us investigate, my dear fellows. Oh, Iris, you're even more enthusiastic than usual today. If anyone has anything to hide, my special Wilson shooting iron will...
Shooting iron? Wilson shooting iron. I was gonna say iron will, as in like something I... That's what I heard that from. I was playing Pokemon Sword and Shield's expansion, and they called one of the Pokemon the Iron Will Pokemon or something like that. I was recalling that. threw me off for a minute. I was like, what game am I playing again? That water pistol?
It's stuffed full of a piping hot extra special blend of mine.
Then I'm quite sure it will be very effective. I'd better be careful not to hide anything. Well, it feels a little strange that Mr. Sholmes is nowhere to be seen, but still, let's go and see what we can find out.
Yes!
Well, onwards we go. It looks like we can visit 6 things. And one of them doesn't make it. Well, 2 of them don't make any sense at the moment, so we'll start at the prison, I guess. Van Zieks. How you doing, buddy? How'd you think the trial went?
Lord Van Zieks is reading. Look. He doesn't seem like he wants visitors, does he?
But he must have noticed that we're here, surely. Yep. What do you Nipponese want? That's no way to greet the lawyer who's trying his hardest to prove your innocence, is it? Perhaps not. I apologize. So, what can I do for you, Mr. Naruhodo?
Lord Van Zieks, speaking earnestly. Oh, the fog will lift over London for the first time in months tomorrow.
This does feel very, very strange. I must say, I was impressed. Oh, well, thank you. Not by you, by your fellow Nipponese, your prosecutor friend. Oh, I see. Yes. It's sardonic, don't you think? For a man such as me, so loathing of the Nipponese, to be entirely at the mercy of the 2 of you. I suppose. It's retribution for having played the part of the Reaper all these years. Played the part? Well, I'm pretty sure you weren't the Reaper, but... I think the Reaper is definitely someone that wants to either pin it on you, or... Yeah, I don't quite know the Reaper's motivations as of now. I mean, all we know about the Reaper is that he snuffs out people that he believes to be doing things that are criminal in nature, and he specifically goes after defendants that are acquitted in the Reaper's cases that he believes are actually evil. In which case, the only time that we've ever got the that we've ever had the opportunity to ascertain who it may be was McGilded, and it turned out to not be the Reaper. It was Ashley. And then we found that out in the 5th case. He was the one who took revenge on McGilded. So that one wasn't actually quote-unquote the Reaper, which is why I started to think it was just all like weird extenuating circumstances around him, but they seem to be still on the whole thing of the Reaper is a person, he's real, and he's actively going after each one of the defendants that are acquitted in Van Zieks' cases, which is odd to me. You once told me that you gladly allowed people to believe you were the Reaper, because it helped reduce the amount of serious crime that took place in London. If keeping quiet and playing the part benefits the cause, a cause I myself am committed to pursuing, then why would I choose to say anything? But the henchman of a criminal killed by the Reaper attacked you only the other day. And that was just the most recent of many attempts on your life, wasn't it? Someone is clearly profiting from your silence about all this. Someone is using you. Believe me, ever since the Reaper first appeared, I've been doing my utmost to expose him. Or rather, expose the organization.
Ah, it's a whole organization?
It's inconceivable that all those accidents were orchestrated by one man. No, the Reaper always appears to have very accurate information about the accused in each case. Which can only mean that somebody at Scotland Yard is involved.
Someone at... You can't mean...
It's taken me many years, but I've finally identified the central figure in this Reaper organization. Tobias Gregson.
No!
I thought so. See, I thought about that. I was like, what if Gregson is the Reaper? I mean, that would make sense, wouldn't it? Gregson, the Reaper? So he thinks that Gregson... The reason he had the guy going around all of the places was to obtain information and... take out targets? So, the reason you were investigating Inspector Gregson is because you intended to expose him as the Reaper? As I said, the Reaper of the Bailey is no single person. It's a highly secret organization with close ties to Scotland Yard. But there's no doubt that Gregson was a key member of that organization.
I don't believe it. Are you saying that that he was behind all those awful criminals meeting there?
Gregson didn't do the dirty work himself.
Oh.
He was the tactician. His job was to covertly investigate the marks and plot their assassinations. In order to do that without arousing suspicion, he regularly needed a firm alibi. Which is where Mr. Vigil came in, posing as the inspector. Vigil knows nothing of the Reaper, but the room he rents on Fresno Street was almost certainly the headquarters of the operation. Gregson would have met the assassin there for briefings.
So we don't actually know who carried out the killings, then.
Actually, I do have a name.
You what? Well, if you can name the man, you have the true identity of the Reaper already, then.
Or... if I can name the woman. Oh. She's a young woman by the name of Asa Shin.
Wait, what? Shin. Yeah, Shin was her. Miss Asa Shin, the true name of a terrifying killer I know only too well. She came to Japan posing as a visiting student and murdered Dr. John H. Wilson. Then, just when it seemed that diplomatic protection would help her escape Japan and conviction, she was killed herself. The mysterious woman was herself murdered in a small summer beach hut. And that woman was actually the Reaper of the Bailey? Mr. Naruhodo, this perhaps isn't the place to discuss. No, of course not. We can't mention it here. The fact that she killed Dr. John H. Wilson. Because Iris doesn't know, and it's very likely that the man was her father. Asa Shin. I should let Father know at once. Yes, I agree. Should we? Should we let Father know at once? We'll find out.
Kazuma, is it? Kazuma Asogi. You say he's a friend of yours.
My best friend. He's the whole reason I got to come to Britain. It was all on his merits. I have nothing but respect for him.
Yes, I understand that only the very best students are selected for such opportunities. And I had a fine demonstration of how sharp he is in the proceedings earlier today. He missed nothing. In fact, his flawless performance was very much reminded me of his father.
Genshin Asogi, the professor.
It's true that the aristocracy at the time was the root of numerous grave societal problems. They were abusing their power, playing with the common man as pawns in politics, in economics, in war. In many ways, Asogi was carving out a canker from society that we British couldn't deal with ourselves. Ah, I see. But that's precisely why it makes no sense. Clint Van Zieks was a noble and upstanding man. He wasn't corrupt. Why did that damn Nipponese have to go and take my brother's life? Maybe he didn't. In spite of having once saved mine. Oh, really? He saved your life? How did that happen? This is big. Big piece of the puzzle here. It was 10 years ago, on a foggy night. What was to be the professor's final strike had sent a wave of panic through the capital. So Clint Van Zieks had already been killed at this point then. Genshin and I were walking down some back streets at a late hour. Of course, at that point, I had no idea of the true nature of the man at my side. All of a sudden... Don't make a peep! You're coming with us! We were surrounded. All of our assailants were armed with pistols, their faces obscured by scarves. Clint was not only from noble heritage, he was a brilliant prosecutor as well. The scum of London hated the sight of him, and they had no sympathy for his younger brother either. I'd been targeted several times before already.
Yeah, it's Van Zieks all right. We've got him.
I could hear them murmuring amongst themselves. I knew they were after me. But just when I thought my time had come... If I let them kill you, Clint would never forgive me. It was Asogi's voice, just a whisper in my ear. Oh, I took a drink and it went down the wrong way. Oh, I apologize. Ugh. After that, I don't remember exactly what happened. Oh my. The next thing I knew, there was silence all around. Genshin lay on the cobbled street. Blood was seeping from his left hand. He'd shielded me. Two days later, they arrested him. On suspicion of being London's most notorious mass murderer ever, the Professor.
How awful for you.
All at once, I lost the brother I revered and the foreign friend I held in such high regard.
I'm so sorry, Lord Van Zieks.
That's the end of my miserable tale. I never thought I'd recount it to anyone.
Well, thank you for confiding in me. The Professor, the Reaper, and Inspector Gregson. I wonder just how intimately related they all are. I still can't quite believe that Gregson was essentially the Reaper, giving assassination orders to Giselle Brett. Mr. Naruhodo, let's go and inform my father. I'm sure our government will want to hear about this new information. Oh, that means I get to meet your daddy, Susie. Hooray!
Yes, alright. This is not going to be good. Oh, no, it's not going to be good. You know what? I don't think I can do this tonight. I do not think that I can literally go through Iris figuring out that her father is dead tonight. Because that's what's going to happen, at least. I really do think that's going to happen right now. And it's mostly because I'm almost entirely certain that Mikotoba had something to do with those cases over there in Japan with Giselle Brett and the murder of Dr. John H. Wilson. And I'm not sure if he's, like, straight up one of the main evil forces in this game or not. But I definitely think he's involved, and he obviously knows who John H. Wilson is, and he's gonna know He's gonna know who Iris is too. So I am not looking forward to this. So yeah, I'm just gonna end it right here. Pretty sizable episode. This case is gonna be. This case is big. This case is big. I thought that we would be done after how strenuous that trial was getting, and then I was like, wait a minute, this guy didn't kill him. He had no reason to kill him. And then I was like, oh no, we're having more case after this, aren't we? And yeah, we're definitely having more case after this. And then after all of that, we're gonna have to bring everything together. Whatever we find out in this case, which is going to ascertain what happened with the events of the professor's trial and subsequent escape attempt. I'm sure we're going to find out all of that information, this case too, and then in the end, we're going to find out who's been orchestrating all this bullshit all this time, and that's going to be case 5. And this, my head is just going to explode, I think, before the end of this game. If I don't make it through Kirby, I mean, you know what happened. So, thank you guys very much for watching. That's going to be it for now. Ugh, I need a break. See you guys later.